Next up, we actually have 11 presenters tonight. I don't know if I said that, but we had an extra, we couldn't decide, so we kept another one. We threw another one in. Okay, our next presenter is Carissa Pauley. Carissa was born in California, but grew up in northern New Jersey, where she and her 6 siblings were homeschooled by a pair of parents who were obviously very talented teachers. After I think high school age anyway, she went on to live in Nebraska, Philadelphia, and moved to Maine with her boyfriend to follow their dreams of inexpensive real estate in the form of a house with land where they could plant themselves and a small crop of vegetables. Unfortunately, that little dream didn't materialize as they had planned, but they were here anyway, so they've settled here for now, and the house dream is still on the back burner. But they're keeping that dream of self-sustainability alive. Carissa works as a social media marketing strategist to make ends meet, but her true passion is for storytelling. At the ripe old age of 24, she has already written 6 novels. I think all unpublished, but she clearly seems to be motivated from a deep inner passion to tell stories. And this is how she describes herself. I'm a writer in Portland, Maine. I work as a social media marketing strategist 40 hours a week and fill the rest of my time with writing, reading, long walks, and spending time with loved ones. I run a young literature publication and spend too much time reading brainpickings.org for inspiration. I don't know this blog or site, I'm going to check it out. I can't get social problems out of my mind, particularly our inability to commit to love and other people in an authentic way. We've fallen far from genuine kindness. I want to bring it back. So, Carissa's a very serious young woman. So, I met Carissa and I've got to say that she's someone who has no fear of being herself in any kind of situation. So prepare yourself for a very unusual PechaKucha presentation. Carissa's going to tell you a story. So please welcome Carissa Pauley.
You guys are right, it's really red here. Before we get started, I just want to say I've had several people ask me about the title of the story, and basically all of this is supposed to happen within 80 seconds. So the title is 80 Seconds, and we'll get started.
Play your audience. Start.
Okay, cool. I'm Carissa Pauley, storyteller here in Portland, Maine, and I just wanted to share this quote with you from Bertrand Russell, and that is to fear love is to fear life, and those who fear life are already 3 parts dead. A cool spring rain had settled on the coastal city. It was 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the sunset would have been visible if the thick storm clouds had given it some room. Instead, the steady pour was here to stay, at least through the night. At a stoplight in the city, which bordered a lush park with green lawns and thick forestation, there met 4 people. Simone was walking the dog. 20 minutes ago, the young woman had donned her white raincoat, grabbed an umbrella, and put the leash on him. She came to the block by the park not long after, and thought how lovely it looked in the rain. Its dark forested pathways were eerie in the eve. She took the scent deep into her lungs and felt its damp presence clinging to her lightly under her colored umbrella. Simone began to let her mind wander as she walked on. She thought of her mother and scolded herself in the muted ambience of the rain's patter on her umbrella. The argument had been short. Simone's mother had hung up several awkward seconds after the bitter young woman had called her a bitter old woman. Simone wasn't here to please her mother or anyone else. Yet her heart sank as she looked up to see a man huddled on the ground under one of the trees in misery. He was in his late 50s with a filthy beard. He's probably my mother's age, thought the young woman. Her heart was heavy as her dog pulled her past the light, past another figure in the dark. Her steps became mechanical as she grieved the separation between her and her mother. She paused while Baxter sniffed some kind of food wrapper, just before he snapped the leash loose from her hand and bolted toward the pathway. Jarek loved to be caught in the rain like this, but today was different. He had his bicycle trailer with him because he'd been selling his homemade chocolate chip ice cream earlier. Jarek looked at his watch while he cycled. Minutes ago, he had called his ex-wife, Barbara, to see if his son was all right, and the 2 of them were still expecting him. Barbara had said yes, they were, but Jack had been in a fight at school and the boy had a black eye. Jarek was anxious about his son and angry about whoever had given his son an injury. His eyes hardened as he cycled through the park, and he tried not to think about Jack. The man could see the stoplight ahead. He thought of the warmth of his son's small body, hugging him, as the cool rain pelted his own while he cycled harder. Jack was 15 minutes away. He'd better hurry. Suddenly, his front bicycle wheel caught on one of the ruts of the path, and he was thrust through the air by inertia and cast on the ground. His bicycle tipped over, and his ice cream, plastic containers, plastic spoons, napkins, toolkit, bags of ice, toppings containers, and whipped cream dumped onto the soaked earth and asphalt. His confused state cleared up after a moment. He saw a dog rushing towards his ice cream, which was out of its container, splayed across the pathway, with the eyes of a hungry fiend. He tried hard not to be enraged by inconvenient circumstances. He was missing his son, but he was surprised by what happened next. He couldn't remember his own name, and he had nowhere to go but where he was. He lay under a tree in the park near the stoplight. It had big branches, so when the skies emptied as they did this evening, he was only wet instead of soaked. He was huddled into the corner of a world made of water, and no one came near him because of his clothes and his smell. Outside his tree shelter, a woman in a white trench coat led by a retriever walked by. Her umbrella was so many colors, the man didn't know where to look. "What's my name?" he whispered aloud. "What's my name?" He hadn't taken his medicine in a week and a half. He couldn't remember what his medicine was. He looked down at his jeans, faded where he had pissed himself. But then for a moment, across the path, he saw a man on a bicycle go flying. Leroy remembered his name as he saw an ice cream tip onto the ground. Leroy was so hungry he hadn't eaten anything in 2 days. He'd stolen food before, and the man on the bicycle was laying on the grass, still. Leroy ventured into the rain to shove chocolate chip ice cream into a plastic, broken bowl with his hands. It was full in a few seconds of grass, dirt, and ice cream, and he shoved a handful of ice cream into his mouth before he bolted towards the stoplight. He ran across the path and started to cross the street. As he did so, he was blinded by lights on his left, and a flash of pain seared through his body. He dropped the bowl of ice cream and fell into the street. Leroy couldn't think about anything other than the pain that cut through his whole consciousness. He lay his head down on the street and began to moan, shutting out his body with his mind. He fell into an unhappy unconsciousness, and the rain did not soothe his pain. Izzy had left the apartment just in time, though the bus was late. She crossed the street and hid under her massive clear plastic raincoat at the stop to wait for the bus. The rain didn't bother her, because she wore the proper rain boots and she was very attached to her raincoat. She was going to meet Nate after his work shift had ended. She couldn't wait. She checked the time and glanced around. She saw a man huddled underneath a tree near the pathway in the dark when she arrived. A woman in white shuffled past her on the left. Izzy was briefly distracted but returned to her lover's reverie. She opened her eyes to look for the bus. She anticipated her evening. She could see it approaching 1 block away, gleaming in the dark. She jumped when she heard a great commotion behind her. As she turned to look, she was surprised to see the homeless man dash towards her. She didn't know how long it was, but just then the bus pulled up to her stop. The homeless man rushed out into the street right in front of it. Her heart pounded in her head and chest as she saw him crumple to the ground like a cloth, and a dark pool of liquid seep through his jeans and shirt. He lifted his head up for a moment, and she moved forward with her favorite raincoat. She pulled it off and put it over him. The rain pelted her clothes, dampening them swiftly. The bus driver exited the bus and bent over the man with her, close to the wet ground under the rain. She thought of Nate, waiting for her, as she listened to the faint sounds of sirens in the distance. The average person encounters about 67,000 other individuals in their lifetime. Are you paying attention?